Hey, good evening, folks. At least I hope there are some folks out there. And I hope you can hear me okay. I'm checking my audio here. Because apparently my streams have been having some audio issues. At least my streams wherein I use Discord. And let's see, Discord audio. Mike Ox says that it is receiving just fine. So hopefully you guys can hear this okay. Anyway, whenever you get on, if you can't hear it, please let me know. Kyle will be joining us here in just a little bit. I'm going to be doing the warm-up. I have a cat in front of me who is currently trying to both distract and annoy me. She was sitting in my seat, and so I gently picked her up and set her on the table because I thought, hey, she'll be comfy on the table. And she proceeded to rub her fat little face all over the monitor, all over my hand. Aggressively rubbing her face on my hand is a precursor to biting, so I knew I had to move it. And she weighs enough that this lightweight monitor could get pushed off the desk by her. And she's able to push buttons on the mouse by hitting it with her head. All kinds of funny shit. But anyway. Stream health. Stream is healthy. So hello to our concurrent viewers. Welcome. It's good to see you all. We're just going to hang out and be kind of casual till Kyle arrives. Not much to do until then, not much to talk about. Got some stuff I'm going to discuss with Kyle this evening. Also, I believe, well, I know I believe, I don't think I believe, but yes, I believe that I will be joining Ishii on his live stream later tonight also. So that's a thing that's a happening. So let me see there. And again, I genuinely hope that you can hear me. But anyway, have you guys been getting some gaming in this week? I played AD&D on Monday, of course, and I've talked about that on Tuesday's live stream, on yesterday's live stream, while I painted. Uh-oh. What just happened? Ah. Sorry about that. Got interrupted by our friends over at Discord. Hey, you've been on this call for more than 5 minutes by yourself. Bandwidth doesn't grow on trees. Yes, I'm entirely sure that the folks at Discord are hurting for bandwidth. Yes, I'm oh so sure that they're hurting for bandwidth. So that may happen again, and I apologize if it does. But I will keep my eyes on things and make sure that I do not get knocked off. See, I think I can be heard. I'm seeing audio bounce. I'm seeing all that fun stuff. I think I can be heard. But if I can't, please say so. Speak to me! Oh, gosh. Oh, here's a mini mail call that's kind of slightly retro. I'm not going to dive too deep into it because I don't want to spend too much time delving, no pun intended, into tech. But I've got something that I want to show off. 5x5 loud and clear. Thank you, Fair Maiden White. Thank you, Paul. It's good to see you guys this evening. Hang on, I just got to lean over to the other side of the table and get this. I got this doodad. Now, I had one of these before, and I'll kind of explain the history of it. But what this is the company that currently makes this is called Rockfire. But I've seen a bunch like Manhattan Computer Accessories. If you ever bought cheap shit for your computers, like 25 pin to 9 pin, or 5.25 bay to 3.5 bay floppies, keyboard covers, cheap mice, back when mice had balls and plugged into the serial port. Things like that were made by Manhattan, but this is actually the company that makes this. If you want to find one of these on Amazon, it's called Rockfire. And what this is, if you're a sim head, or if you were a sim head and you played lots of flight sims back in the day, or driving sims because it works with driving stuff, or you just happen to have a joypad that you like a whole lot, that is a DB15 style. This bad boy right here. Okay, so Microsoft deprecated analog joystick support. I think it may have been with Windows XP. They may have even, because I seem to recall using one of these on Windows XP. But yeah, basically, they told sound card manufacturers, we're not supporting the analog MIDI standard anymore. We're going to be all about USB. So if you were a serious sim head, you might have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in late 1990s money, which would be probably 20% more today, in flight control yokes, throttles, flight sticks, rudder pedals, or a driving wheel, and brake clutch and gas pedals, and a gear shift if you liked driving sims. So once Microsoft dropped support for the 15-pin port, discrete sound card manufacturers and motherboard manufacturers dropped the port. So if you wanted to upgrade your operating system, you were shit out of luck. Now, a lot of sim fans did something that I could never conceive of. These guys got their propeller heads together and figured out how to gut their old joysticks and wire in and program their own. There we go again. Hang on. Sorry about that, guys. But they figured out how to program their own joysticks and build their own joysticks inside the case. They kept the mechanical app, the stick, the throttle, and all that, and put new circuit boards inside that were wired for USB. That's really, really above my pay grade. So I picked up one of these back in the day, and then for some reason I got rid of it. I was just like, I never use my flight stick. This is just taking up space, yada yada. And I got rid of it. And I finally broke down and bought a new one. And this lets me use a really kick-ass joystick. The company that made it, it was like their jewel in the crown, their pièce de résistance. It was their Gone with the Wind. It was their magnum opus, and then the company went out of business, and they were called Suncom. Now, they had made joysticks going all the way back into like the late 1970s. They made third-party joysticks for Atari and Apple and Commodore computers, and then just on through the years, and then they made controllers for PCs and so on and etc. But the Talon stick has a special place in my heart because the stick is the same size and has the same button functionality as the stick and throttle that are in an F-15E fighter jet. And I absolutely love my Talon joystick. But I couldn't use it until I picked up the joystick converter back when it was made by Manhattan. And now I bought another one and I tested it out today. Now, unfortunately, I long ago lost any instructions for my joystick, the little multi-page manual, because it's a fairly complex piece of hardware with, like, including the throttle, like 26 programmable buttons, and each one of those buttons can have a corded mode where, like, if you're pushing this button over here might do something different. It's nuts. So, and by the way, yes, we will lose audio and video, and I'll bring it back up yet again because screw you guys over at Discord. I ought to make a dummy Discord account just to dial into, just for such an emergency. But anyway, so I picked up this bad boy, and I'm happy to say that once again, I can use my old school analog joystick with my new school computer. Now, how old school is this thing? When I opened it up, the little four-fold piece of instructions that came with it, and it's printed in Chinglish or English as your tastes go, and it said, like, to valid, please use the Windows 98 ME XP 2000. It fully expects it's going to be plugged into a version of Windows that is, at its youngest, 20 years old. So I think XP dropped in like 2001. So, funnily enough, it still works on Windows 10. You plug it into Windows 10 with the joystick plugged in and the joystick set to the right mode, and it's like, yep, that's a 4-axis 4-button controller. Boss, I know what that is. And then you can manually program the buttons. It uses a keyboard pass-through interface. It's not worth going into. But if you happen to have one, these I think are like $20.99 on Amazon. And I love it. And again, it's not just for the real nerdy flight stick and so on and etc. They'll work with game pads or just about any other kind of analog controller you've got. And isn't that what I'm all about? The old school. This is very old school. So I was not disappointed. This is funny as I read this. It says, designed for IBM PC 486, 586, Pentium 2, Pentium 2 compatibles. So thank God I've got a machine that's compatible with a 486, 586, or Pentium 2. That makes me happy. Oh, USB extension port required. PCcables.com Inc. I would be shocked if PCcables.com is still around and not just up for sale. Unique 4-mode switch for maximum compatibility and flexibility. Because if that sounds like I'm making fun, I'm not. There were a lot of differently functioning analog sticks back in the day. That's one thing that the switch over to USB solved, was kind of differing standards of sticks. Now, if it's a HID device, human interface device, which I guess I just call it a human interface device. Yeah, now the computer's just like, that's an interface device. It goes this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, some shoulder buttons, and that's it, and I'm good to go. I don't need to know anything else. But analog sticks, each one could potentially do their own thing, and the 4 programmable modes it's got, it tries to cover those. Supports all conventional analog game controllers. Well, it supports my very edge case Suncom joystick, so I'm happy about that. Compatible with the new PC98 standards. The new PC98. We're going to be, one day we'll be closer to 2098 than 1998, and somebody will find this thing in an archaeological dig and wonder what the hell it's for. Ergonomic design. It's a box. It's a little baby blue box. I'm not sure if that shows up on the camera well. But yeah, there's nothing ergonomic about it. 6-foot extension cable. That is very helpful. Easy installation and convenient operation. I'll give you 7 out of 10 on that one, guys. Ultimate compatibility. Let me see. I'm gonna see what ultimate compatibility has. Let me put my painting goggles on, as the print is that small. Rockfire, Avant-Garde, Bazooka Fighter, and Thrustmaster FCS compatibles. Mode 2, Rockfire. Maya Fighter and CH Flight Stick Pro compatibles. Mode 3, Fire Plus, Fire Dragon, and other 4-axis 4-button joystick compatibles. That's what I've got in my Suncom Talon. Silverhawk 2, that's mode 4, Silverhawk 2, Space Ranger, and other sophisticated 2-axis 8-button gamepad compatibles. So you could have some pretty serious hardware back in the day plugged into your joystick port, and this thing brings it back to life. So if you're not interested in literally inventing a tiny computer to put in your old joystick while removing all the control switchology inside it, which is me, then do invest in one of these. They're worth it. And they are as simple as plugging your joystick into this and then plugging this into your PC and then going into Windows and setting it up. So I'm glad I got that. That's not exactly a mail call. That's more like a thing that I bought kind of thing. So anyway, so Fair Maiden White, how are you? Paul, how are you? It's definitely good to see you. And by the way, for Paul and for Fair Maiden White and for anyone else who's out there, I know, and this is not a complaint, this is a compliment, Ishii has a lot more visitors and so on. Viewers, that's the word I was looking for. I knew it was a V word. He has a lot more viewers of his live stream than I do. So if there's anything on the role-playing game front before Kyle gets here, hell, after Kyle gets here, I'll interrupt him. I don't give a damn. Call the cops. I don't give a fuck. But if there's any questions you guys have got on the RPG front that... sorry, hang on a second. And we're back once again. There we go. So if there's any questions you've got on the gaming front, on the role-playing game front, that you are not getting, you did not get answered, that I or Ishii or anyone else may have missed during previous times about painting, about any of the gaming stories I tell, anything like that, feel free to ask them now. And I will be more than happy to address them. So just let me know, and I can do that. What's this? A wild Kyle appears. There we go. Excellent. I'm going to be getting some new studio cans soon. By which I mean just a nice set of analog headphones, so I can use my mic, my nice boom mic over here, and the headphones, and not have stupid Discord and OBS and YouTube and Windows all fighting for control of the mic. I will just be able to talk.
I feel all those science fiction movies of the 70s and 80s lied to us because they just told us that we just pick up a regular phone, like the little video phone in the movies. She just gets a call and she presses answer and the image appears. They didn't tell us that there would be, Facebook and Google Chat and Discord and what was the other one the other day, Streamline or something. They didn't tell us that there's 30,000 different apps and Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom.
And yeah, like when somebody said, I'll video call you, you have to ask them on what app.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking like, and they just happen to show up in three of my favorite science fiction movies. You already mentioned Aliens, but in 2001, Dr. Haywood Floyd calls his wife and his daughter on a Bell video phone from the space station orbiting the Earth before he goes onto the moon and investigates the monolith. In Blade Runner, Deckard calls Rachel from Taffy Lewis's bar again on a Bell video phone, and the call, all like 8 seconds of it or however long it is, costs him like $1.75, which I guess was supposed to be some, like $1.75. Oh my God, the future is so expensive. And then, of course, as you point out, in Alien, Ripley just shoves Burke's little
Oh yeah, the card.
plastic business card into her phone, and it like calls him. He's away. And she's like, "We're gonna kill him, right?" He's like, "That's the plan." Yoink. Now it would be like, "Okay, Burke. Burke, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Burke? You can see me, but you can't hear me. Not if you can hear. Yes, I can hear you, but now I've lost your picture. Hang on, let me reboot my phone." It would take all the tension and gravitas out of those scenes if they had put actual video phones the way they work now in those science fiction movies.
Well, what I liked too was that in those movies always depicted just it was just a regular phone company, so the same company that once provided your landline, they just transitioned over to giving video phones.
Yeah,
It it didn't seem to have occurred to anyone that those large companies would go, no, we're not going to do that. That could like make us sack some money ourselves, so we won't do that. So what we'll do instead is we'll leave it to 30 different startups, 30 different tiny companies do it, and then they'll become some of them will become really large companies. We'll do that instead. And then totally unrelated companies will come in and do it too. Like who would have expected, Facebook and social media to become a primary method of people doing video calls, for
hmm,
example. That wasn't really, on the cards when he started it, so he could get cheap phone numbers and rate them and stuff.
yeah. I remember. Okay, so I used to work at Best Buy for a very short period of time, less than a year. It was awful. It was the second worst job I have ever had in my life, was working at Best Buy. But on my break, on my way to the break room, um, with my hand firmly in place, it looked like I was pledging allegiance to the United States of America, but I was covering up my name tag and my Best Buy logo. So for all you knew, I was just a guy in blue chinos or in beige chinos and a blue polo shirt. Um, because it didn't matter. Like you could be like, I mean, the attitude of Best Buy's management was like, if you're going into diabetic shock and you have to get to the break room to shove a candy bar in your mouth so you can then inject some, you'll remain conscious long enough to inject some insulin, and somebody stops you and asks you to get a washing machine off of the upstock, guess you'll die. Best Buy was goddamn awful. But anyway, I remember walking through the computer or through the office products department, and I saw They had ISDN video phones from AT&T. ISDN, for those of you who don't know, is Integrated Services Digital Network, and it was a 128 kilobyte dedicated computer line that you could get laid to your house from the box on the pole or stuffed in the ground outside your house. But they were outrageously expensive. They were like $999 for one phone. So if you didn't know someone with one, like you're like, I want my mom to have one of these. Break out the credit card. It's going to cost you $2,000, not counting the ISDN provision. Why they sold single ISDN phones is beyond me. But the history of video phones, it goes all the way back to the 1960s when AT&T, of course, they were the only phone company in the United States until 83 or 84 when the government forcibly broke them up. But in the 1960s, AT&T could and would provision you, and it was only in the Northeast, of course, big cities. I think they did some in Los Angeles too, but you could get a video phone. The price per hour of conversation in 1960s dollars was like $148 an hour. I mean, imagine having to pay like $2,000 an hour to make a phone call today. I can't even fathom that. Um, what they discovered back then with video phones. I mean, now it's ubiquitous. As much as we bitch about the tech, now it's ubiquitous. But what they found was people didn't want to be seen or see someone else all that much except as a novelty when they were on the phone. I mean, you might be lounging around in your underwear drinking a beer when your mom calls.
Yeah, you don't know if I'm wearing pants or not.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. I'm just going to Control Alt Delete and burn my computer now. Um,
There's a wonderful shot of our Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister, like everyone else, during all the lockdowns last year, ended up working remotely. And they had the national cabinet. So we used to have a thing called the Council of Australian Governments, which was the state premiers and the Prime Minister would get together like once a year or something like that and argue about what to spend money on. And so they turned that to a regular meeting, the pandemic and the drama and that, and they called it the National Cabinet. And that's so as cabinet meetings, they don't have to release what is discussed at them, whereas Council of Australian Governments they did. So they're like, we can have regular meetings and keep the content secret. Anyway, so if he's sitting there in his suit jacket and tie, there's a wonderful shot of him after a meeting with a suit jacket and tie and board shorts, like surfer board shorts. And there's nothing like, a 50-year-old balding white bloke overweight in surfing board shorts. I mean, that's sexy stuff.
sure, yeah. How ridiculous. No one thinks that's fun. Um, Now, I can get away with it because I'm a dork and I'm never going to leave the country of Australia. Unless you guys really, really want me to, then I guess.
You can't be as much of a dork as ours. His name's Scott Morrison. They call him Scotty from marketing. He used to be in marketing, and he's one of those guys who just has the constant like affable smirk
Yeah, I,
all the time, all the time.
I know that time.
Extremely affable, and he doesn't offend anyone at all, but he doesn't impress anyone. One of those guys.
Yeah, I know the type.
Yeah, it is that kind of type. But it's the kind of type that democracies thrive on because the sort of person who has strong opinions will tend to put some people offside and upset them. And so when they come to choose a leader, they don't choose that guy with the strong opinions. They choose the harmless, inoffensive one.
Yeah,
Or they might for a while choose the one with strong opinions. But then, like the popularity
Yeah. Yeah. So, somebody that basically their cabinet secretaries and party donors and special interest groups can put the thumb screws to.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
completely right.
yes. The wonders of democracy and of video calls.
Yes.
Um, So there was something I was thinking about this today, and this is actually game related because I know I had mentioned to you via email. For those of you who are not aware, who might be listening to this stream and watching it later, Kyle has written a really really cool role playing game called Conflict.
Oh no. Okay, sorry, wrong one. We were talking about cool role playing games.
But we were talking about cool role playing games. But Kyle wrote a cool one called Conflict, and I think you should all go buy it right away. Flying Mice Games on Drive Through RPG. Um, but I asked Kyle. I said, "Yeah, I've been playing Half Life Black Mesa, and the parts where you're fighting essentially the government troops sent into the lab to hush everything up and make sure nobody leaves and says, hey, we're working on teleportation technology and have brought back samples not just from an alien planet but from an alien dimension, etc. It's some pretty intense combat. I mean, you can for a good stretch of the game completely lose the sense that there's something supernatural going on, and you're literally fighting in a war zone. And you're one lone adventurer, scientist. All you got going for you is your HEV, your hazardous environment suit, which is kind of powered armor, but not like Starship Troopers or Iron Man. It soaks up some damage and enables you to move a little bit faster. And that part is something that I would like running a game set in the Black Mesa facility after the Resonance Cascade, with the parties playing scientists from the Lambda complex who are caught in the crossfire, sort of on the other side of the base, away from where Gordon Freeman is going on. So we were talking about using conflict to simulate that, and some of the more exotic weapons that you can get your hands on. A An actual literal laser gun, and then there's another called the gluon gun, which is a particle beam weapon that tears you apart at a quantum level if you get hit with it. Not much an Interceptor 4 vest is going to do to stop that when somebody is literally hosing you down with anti-neutrons. But so we kind of chit chatted about using conflict for that and what it would do, and I got to thinking about the game I was playing, Black Mesa. Now, if you're not familiar with Half Life, I just explained the plot of it. You start out as a research scientist who helps them conduct an experiment on this strange alien crystal, tears holes in reality. Alien invasion forces come pouring through. The scientists who survived the experimental accident are like, hey, you've got your HEV suit on. Please get to the surface and call for help. And by the time you make it to the surface, help has showed up in the form of U.S. Marines killing everyone they see, aliens and humans. The game was released by Valve way back in 1998, and it was heralded as an enormous achievement in computer gaming because of the leap over the AI of Quake 2, and Doom. The realistic sense of being in this base, and like you go through parts of it that have clearly been abandoned for decades at that point, and it's very suspenseful. It's like the X-Files meets Call of Duty. It's got horror elements to it. It's a very intense game. But again, it was released back in 1998, and the graphics engine it uses is the Quake engine. It just very tarted up. Um, so Valve then released Half-Life 2. They released a couple of short sequels to it, then seemingly forgot about it for almost a decade, and they released Half-Life Alyx. Well, in the interim, a group of dedicated fans of Half-Life said, we're going to remake the first Half-Life game. We're going to use the new programming engine, and we're going to redo it from scratch. We're not just going to apply the old textures to new models. We're not just going to up the polygon count and install a new physics engine. And they did it. They did a very admirable job. Called and because it can't just be called Half-Life, as friendly as Valve was towards them, they're not going to put up with that. So they called it Half-Life Black Mesa. And I was playing that. My daughter bought it for me. She knows how much I love the Half-Life games. And up to a point, I was gripped by it. I was like, areas that used to seem very kind of small, even though they're outdoor areas, you can tell that like the sky is just a big polygon box around you, and it's very abstracted. Like, okay, there's no way a hydroelectric dam would be like just 20 meters wide. It would span a huge. Well, they went in and they took all the things that were implied and made it shine, and it was so much fun until about the last quarter of the game. I kept hitting a wall on overcoming certain parts of the game, and I said, have my game skills just disintegrated that much now that I'm an old man? Have I just, the mouse and keyboard twitch just not doing me? Should I just go back and play the game from 20 years ago? And I went and I started looking at frequently asked questions to see if, am I just missing something? Like, is there just like a door that's around the corner that I'm not seeing that I need to go through to stop being shot by the giant alien ship? And what I discovered digging into it was very disappointing, and it falls into the category of, you had one job, guys. They reimagined several elements of the game because they said, it was fine back in 1998 to have an enemy that would do these set piece battles and that you could take down in, good order like this. But modern gaming sensibilities are such that, we really felt like it needed to be more of a challenge. It took me multiple tries to beat Half-Life the first time, the end bosses in Half-Life the first time I played it. It was, and by multiple tries, I don't mean like I had to reload saves a few times. I mean like gave up on the game and came back. Gave up on the game again and came back.
It's like the guy, so Last of Us 2, they released a permadeath setting,
Mm-hmm.
and you could, so your character dies, you have to go back. You can either set it permadeath the whole game or permadeath just for that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And the first guy to do the permadeath challenge for the whole game, I think he had done it 92 times. 92 times. So like 91 times, because there's the cutscenes. You can skip the cutscenes, but there's also some flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You work through those flashbacks.
Ugh.
So he'd just gone through that 91 times before he.
I can believe it. So this is their mindset going forward, and this is where we merge back into the role playing game lane. So many designers, I feel like, particularly like, I got a distinct 5th edition D&D vibe from the last fifth of Half-Life Black Mesa. It wasn't broken. I didn't ask you to fix it. Their representation of the alien dimension when you go through, again, it's playing it in the original Half-Life engine. It's very brown. It's very muted, kind of muddy brown colors. It's not very visually appealing at all. It's not very well regarded by gamers. This was a visual treat. It was so rich and so beautiful. And then the last two boss creatures showed up and just booped on everything. Um, it was visually appealing, and yet they they just fell down on the execution so bad that whereas I probably played the original Half-Life after my aborted attempts to defeat the boss probably a dozen or more times over the years. Um, I'm not sure that I would go back and play Black Mesa again, and it gave me a very fifth edition feel. It's like you guys promised, oh, this is just like the way it used to be, but bigger, but sharper visual acuity and so on. And up to a point that was true, but where it counted, the whole thing was just kind of a screw job. And I don't like having to say, yeah, I completed the game, but I turned on God mode to do it. You know? And it made me think of RPG sequels. How many companies have said, this is going to be just as cool as you remember it, but more cool because we're changing stuff. It's like every iteration of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, look, I slag second edition D&D a lot, and I shouldn't, because rules wise, really, literally until 1989 when Wizards of the Coast, or no, not even then, until like 1998, rather, because it came out in 89, until 1998 when Wizards of the Coast announced third edition and started leaking playtest documents out. The game was essentially the same as it had been since 1978. I mean, that's 20 years, and the only other systems that I can think of that held that continuity and changed editions are Hero System Champions and Call of Cthulhu. And then, after third edition came out, I guess 3.5 kind of counts, but not really because it did change some rules. Um, it's like they just seem to keep spinning this wheel of fortune and trying to get it to stop on really great game, And it's like there's other bars like really good looking game but terrible, really accessible game but also terrible but also good looking, and they keep hitting those instead of a solid game. It's like, guys, I didn't ask you to reinvent the wheel. I didn't ask you to give Gonarch or Nihilanthe 20 million more hit points and 52 different attacks that stun lock me and make me slam the F7 key 52 times a minute.
I think it's a natural human thing. I mean, it's a natural human thing we've discussed before. Like if you're writing this and every other bit of writing that I've done in my life, anyone who's been to uni and written essays will have experienced that where you write it up and you look it over and it's good, and you think, like, just tinker with it a bit, and it's perfect, and you completely ruin it. You should have just not let the perfect, yeah, not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The good be the enemy of perfect, whichever one it is. And just, okay, it's good. Send it out and stick with it, because there's always, it's going to be tinkered with everything. Every game master is going to put in their own house rules
Mm-hmm.
and tinker with it. So whatever you do, they're gonna mess with it. Even if you could reach into their brain and pull out the one true perfect game out of their head, what they, a particular individual game master wanted, when they get it, they will still tinker, because it's the nature of people that do role playing games. It's social creative.
Sure.
The person who steps up as a game master has a bit of oomph and sort of courage that they'll do that, and they'll lead the group, because it all depends on
Is he going to change him?
to
Is
change
he
them.
going to fucking change him?
And people are going to go to the concerts and say, why is there this extra riff? Nothing compares to you. What's she doing here?
Yep.
I remember being profoundly disappointed by Bob Dylan gigs that I went to in about, I don't know, 1990 or something like that.
Hmm.
Like, this isn't Bob Dylan. This isn't what I had on my albums. What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's so I think it's a very natural human thing, and even the most creative people and the most recognized artists out there, they're not immune to that, to this desire to just keep remaking it. And of course, it's only going to be worse if you get something like a role-playing game, which is owned by however many different companies over the years. And everyone's familiar with, they go to a workplace and a new manager comes in, and the new manager just changes it. They fire some people, and they hire some people, or they change some procedures. And it was fine before, but the new manager feels the need to make their mark and to make the place their own. It's just like if you buy a house your wife will want to renovate, even if she said it was perfect before,
Yeah.
she wants to renovate the study or the kitchen or wherever she likes to hang out. She wants to change things. It's human nature. You want to make things right, change them. So and I think that's doubly true if it's a company and they go, okay, how do we get a new income stream? How do we get new money? We'll make another initiative. That's the easiest thing. They could make an entirely new game instead of why not sell? So, all right, just make a new edition and people will buy it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I mean, hey, what is the diviest greasy spoon in town have with the four Michelin stars, $600 a plate restaurant? What do they have in common? Salt and pepper on the table. You know, doesn't matter if they're bringing like medallions of wagyu beef in with $800 shredded truffle over the top. You can reach over and pick up a salt shaker and put more salt or pepper on it. Or if you're eating a plate of scrambled eggs and drinking coffee that could take paint off of a boat on the other side of
That's
town,
the best kind. That's the
the
best kind.
best kind. You can feel your epithelial cells actually screaming in terror as you pour this stuff down your throat. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I guess I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like the SNL character, almost a carrier character, Phil Hartman played the unfrozen caveman lawyer. And he literally plays like a Neolithic man, but he's an attorney in modern times, and he's very well spoken. But he'll refer back to his primitive upbringing. He's like, you know, I don't understand your strange future ways. When I call my wife on my cell phone, sometimes I have to remember that she's not actually trapped in this little box, but it's a radio carrier wave taking my voice to a support tower and then onto our house. But what do I know? I'm just a frozen caveman who got unfrozen. And with a gamer, it's like, or as a gamer, there's a part of me that desperately wants to see the Your Gateway to Adventure cardboard standee in the corner of any game store I go into with a stack of players handbooks like the one you got there and Dungeon Master's Guide and pastel covered modules in the four cubbies that I can just walk over and pick up and buy for $9 for the hardbacks, or $4.99 or $3.99, whatever it was, for the adventure module. But as I am forced to confess, very often it is not 1978 anymore, and it never will be again. I just That was kind of one of the things that irritated me about the development of 5e. They I definitely think they saw some of their market share eroding with the birth of the old school Renaissance. I don't mean capital O, capital S, capital R. I mean guys like you and me and others, the dudes over at Knights and Knaves, creating our own stuff and going our own way and being very vocal about it while we created and did it. Because the two lead-ins that they had, or three lead-ins, were we're returning old PDFs to resale. And they did new scans of them when they could get their hands on copies to rescan or just retypeset them. They re-released the 1E8 D&D books and several, at least a couple of collections of classic adventures. And their first, when Mike Merle started blogging about fifth edition, he was like, you know, guys, the tent just doesn't just have to be D&D Next. D&D Next can, what if we introduced a game where you could adjust the game, like baked into the rules were the ability to adjust the game to more of an old school style play, and people got very excited about that. Well, somewhere along the way, that got left along the side of the road, and when I got the first playtest packet, I was like, excuse me, where are the dials that you said I could turn to make this like D&D? And the response from Merle's on his blog, I mean, not to me, but to others who brought the question up, was, oh, I never said we were gonna do it. Oh, you just roped us in as playtest. Right. Okay.
Well, I think you're looking at a really great anyway. I mean, it's like that thing with GURPS and like, oh, it can be your GURPS fourth edition. Oh, it can be light. It can be really simple. It's like, if there's 500 pages, they're going to use it. You know, most people are going to use it. Somebody's going to, because you'll be going along in the game session, and then, with this many rules, and then some player will notice on page 223 this little rule. If you add that, now he gets a +1 to hit. And he'll say, can't I do that? Because I want the +1 to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And most game masters, because it's a social creative thing, and you're social, and so if you're like, nah, fuck you, then you tend not to pick the game. So they'll be accommodating and they'll go, okay. So that rule on page 223 gets used. Then the other player steps up and says, well, I actually noticed I was trying to find page 223, I accidentally went to page 140, and there's this rule there. I get an extra 3 hit points. I should have an extra 3 hit points because I've got this card. And pretty soon you're using all 500 pages. So it's a nature of it. So if they had the dial of complexity to make it more or less like old school, everyone's going to turn it to a win. It's going to be super simple. And before you know it, you've got that 3.5 thing where you've got the first level character and you've got to plan out their career. You get those families who, well, our kid has to go to this kinder because that will lead them to this school,
Yep.
and then they'll graduate Harvard Law in 2036. Yes, they've got it all planned out. You've got to do that with your character. It's just not accepted to do otherwise. So it's just inevitable. If you have those amazingly complex rules, they are going to be used. And the concept of the amazingly complex rules, someone will find a loophole and use that to drive their 8th level lesbian stripper through and gut all the orcs. So then you've got to put out the splat book, which deals with drow lesbian strippers to try to control them. And then somebody says,
I have that splat book. Hit me up for a link. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, but what about my Kansas Thief? Somebody says, it's not fair. How come the drow lesbian strippers get all the action? So the Kansas Thief wants some action too. And no, not that. And
Yikes.
so then you end up with the splat book trick. It's not,
Yep.
it's just inevitable. It's just things multiply in complexity. It's like The British colonial office in 1900, when the British Empire covered a quarter of the globe, was like 200 people. And then by 1965, it was thousands of them. And as the number of capital ships in the Royal Navy decreased, the number of naval staff increased. So it's just inevitable because you have things like, there's the guy who's doing the job, and the job takes 110% of his time. So he's a little bit busy. And then it grows a little bit and takes 120% of his time, and he gets a little bit stressed. So he asks for an assistant. But then he realizes that if he hires an assistant, that assistant, well, it's just you and him. So he will be doing essentially the same job as you. So when your superior retires or is promoted and your superior job is vacant, and you've just hired your own rival. That was a stupid idea.
Yes.
So instead, what you do is you ask two assistants. Because if you have two assistants, then they think of themselves underneath, they think of themselves with, and you can play them against each other because they will then be rivaling for your position when you get promoted. So, and of course, there's still 120% of the job, but it's now spread amongst three people. They do 40% each. So this is why you have, the council workers building roads, and you've got five guys. One guy is keeping the road, one guy is writing on a piece of paper, and there's another three guys just standing around.
Yep.
It's the same. It's the same everywhere worldwide. It's the same with game rules. It's just human nature that we just add needless complexity. We just add it on and create busy work. There was a wonderful survey. David Gray talks about this recently done. And he wrote a book called Bullshit Jobs. He noted a survey in the UK, varying surveys. Anywhere between 40 and 60% of people think that their job is bullshit. That they produce nothing of value. And then also when surveyed, people say that they do, I think it was 1.5 hours of productive work a day. I think they must have been talking to office workers because they seem to be particularly cynical about their work. But yeah,
Yeah.
1.5 hours. When you factor in all bullshit jobs, because some of the people who think their job is bullshit, they're actually doing something productive, but they don't think it has value, but it does. And then there'll be a whole bunch of other people who are absolutely convinced that their job is very important, but they produce nothing tangible whatsoever, like diversity managers, set intimacy coordinators, and useless people like that.
Right.
So I think they'll probably balance each other out. So if you factor in that about half the people are doing a bullshit job, and then the ones who are working are only spending a small part of their day productive, it turns out that about 10% of our population could like supply everything that everyone else needs. We're
I
such an astoundingly productive civilization that we can make all this busy work and have all this useless crap and
I
still work.
I'll tell you as a corollary to that. First of all, gaming related, and the second will be not gaming related, but gaming related is that the flip side corollary of you know if you give me the option to turn everything up to 11, I'm going to turn everything up to 11. Is that if fifth edition had come out and said, this is how you run fifth edition like fifth edition. However, this is how you run fifth edition like first edition. How many of us would have bought it rather than say, yeah, but I can just run first edition? Because when people say, oh yeah, and it's been this way since third edition, yeah, you can just if you want to keep it, if you want to keep descending armor classes, keep descending armor classes. It just changes a number on the page. Oh, okay. If you want to keep multiple differentiated XP for different classes, just keep that. Okay. If you want to keep this, keep this. If you want to keep money, to, payment to, and so by the time you give me a stack of options of things that I can do to make it just like AD&D, why don't I save my $90 and just play AD&D? because I've already got all the books and I know how to play it.
spend the $90 on snacks.
Spend the $90 on snacks. The other thing that relates to what you said, which is not D&D or gaming related, is one of the most subversive and insightful movies into the mind of, now I will say, the American worker. This may apply to Australian too, if you've seen the film. Is of course Office Space by Mike Judge. When Office Space came out, and I mean, there's a whole huge story, and all the people that were in Office Space, from Mike Judge on down, everybody that was involved with it can tell you the convoluted story behind getting Office Space made and how Fox screwed up its release. I think Fox knew how dangerous that movie could be if it got widely promoted and sent out to the public at large. But it very quickly went to home video and to Comedy Central to run it. And the night it debuted on Comedy Central, back in the mid 1990s, I was working for an electronic finance company, which is where the protagonist works, and our jobs were primarily focused on getting ready for Y2K, which is what the protagonist in the movie did. And I called up my supernumerary, Jose, and I said, please tell me you're watching Office Space on Comedy Central right now. And he said, just very quietly, he said, I am. I said, Jose, this is us. Like, I'm like genuinely freaking out right now. This is us. And he's like, this is us. This is everything that went down in that movie. If you've never worked an IT type office job or just an office job in general, everything that went down in that movie is true. It's all true. If we could get away with telling our bosses, look, I'm not going to work but for maybe 2 solid hours this week, we would, because we did. Our jobs in the 90s, when we were in our mid 20s and dinks, double income, no kids, or maybe even single income, no kids, was avoiding work at any cost. Money flowed like water back then. You know, it was pre 9/11. It was post Cold War. If you could spell HTML, a company would give you a job. you know,
I missed out, damn it.
and you were off being an operator though. You had a much cooler job. Um,
Who was it? What office places do your old generation killers divide?
fair enough.
A lot of sitting around and being uncomfortable, not doing the job that you were trained for.
Having to sit on an ammo box and try and shit out an MRE. Um, but no, we watched it, and I mean, like I said, I was on the phone, but I could tell like his jaw hit the floor. And we got to work the next day, and we're looking around at our coworkers and like, that's that guy, and that's that guy, and she's that one girl. I'm sorry, what?
Who was your Limburg?
Oh, our Bill Lumberg. There were a few of them, but the guy, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's dude, it's been 25 years now, almost since then.
You wanted to forget.
I wanted to forget, but yeah. When I left production, a Bill Lumberg rose up in the production side of the house, and now we had a guy who was like Milton, except he was, man. I okay. Did you guys get Andy Griffith down there in Australia? Did you ever see the Andy Griffith show?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. There's a barber on the show. The Floyd the barber. Oh, oh, Andy, yeah. Oh, I saw the new 3D movie. I was in Raleigh. Oh, it was something else. We had a programmer, and he talked like Floyd the barber. He was the nicest friggin' dude in that entire company, just about. When the processes he was responsible for on this ridiculous OS2 running computer just shoved off in the corner of the data center, like I hated calling programmers because I knew I was waking somebody up at like 2 o'clock in the morning if I was on the night shift or I was screwing up their weekend. But it was their
waking someone up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they were sleeping.
or that, yeah. Um, but it was their job, and I legitimately got anxiety, even though they were the ones on the call list. And George Sheets was his name. I would call George, and oh George, God, I'm so sorry, but the DBLF file isn't going on the OS2 box. I'm sorry if it's something. And he's like, no, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Do me a favor. Go over to the console. Open up the program manager, and he'd walk me through it just as pleasant as could be. So he was kind of our Milton, but not in attitude. Just in his general laid back sort of like if he had just strolled by my cube when I left production and went into internal IT where we basically distributed and fixed desktop computers for people, which was loads more fun. If he had just strolled by my desk one day and said, Bill, I'm going to burn this whole place down this weekend, and kept on rolling, I'd have been like, God bless you, George. Amen. Good for you, bud. But he didn't. He stopped. George Sheets would stop by my cube, and he knew I liked home theater gear, and he would bring a stack of photographs, like actual physical photographs. And he was working on this massive house, and I hope he got it built, and I hope he lives there in an absolutely wonderful retirement with his wife and grandkids or whatever. But he was building this mansion out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in rural Florida. And he would bring me these progress photos as the movie theater he was building in it. Not theater room. I don't mean like room like this with surround sound speakers mounted on the wall. A fucking like 10-person auditorium, 10 or 20-person auditorium movie theater he was building. He's like, yeah, I'm having to wire the speakers in today. I was like, that's awesome, George. That's great, man.
Well, I thought the entrance to Milton was that nobody, like this guy's been in years, but nobody actually knows what he does.
Yeah, no, that wasn't George. Everybody knew what George did, and George was super important. We did have some Miltons in terms of what the fuck does that guy do again?
It's part of being in a large company.
Yeah.
When I was a chef, I worked at Crown Casino Provision at a place called Conservatory, which is a buffet thing all the time. I don't know why they didn't pay for it all the time when it was a buffet. It was doing the same food. But anyway, it was the executive chef takes me around on the first few days and introduces me to people. This is Rob, he knows the Electronics, this is Georgia, does Gibberish, anyway, goes past, and then he passes over. There's this woman standing in the corner, paradox. She's a
Mhm.
chef, she's got paradox. And who's that? He goes, oh, Grace, I think her name is, something like that. And I said, oh, what does she do? I don't know, he said. And we walk on. And how long have you been exec chef here? Oh, 18 months. How can you not know what one of your staff is doing? Well, I said, she was here when I started. And, and she always seems to do something productive. And I put her on the night shift, and she doesn't complain. If she ever comes and asks for a different shift, she's more than earned it after, a year and a half at least of doing night shift. She's more than earned the right to have the shifts of her choice, but she never has. She's always doing something, so I leave her alone. So I think every organisation has that person who just finds a corner and chops carrots.
Yeah.
Kind of looks busy every time the boss walks past, and they must be doing something productive, so we'll leave them alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tried to go up and say hello, and she just gave me one word responses. I was given to understand that she was not there for socialising.
Of course not.
My own thing too.
Of course not. Um, the people whom I didn't know what they did, when I started there, and just the up until the last year that I was there at this company called Star Systems, we were on two campuses. Executives were like a mile up the road in a different office building, and production, we were in the older office building. But when I got over into the IT department and I would go down to the colonnades building, they called it. When I go to the colonnades, I would walk past cubes that were in our office area, and they were almost always like completely isolated. And I swear, Kyle, one of them, the mouse, just the hump of the mouse and the surface of the desk itself had a very, very faint sheen of dust on it. Just the faintest bit of dust. And I had the occasion to stop over there because this guy's computer had a ticket. He had put in a ticket, a request to do software update or something, and I go over there and I'm like, so I turn his computer on and it's password, or I turn his monitor and his computer's on and his computer's password protected, and I'm like, it's too late to call in a password protect. So I go back and we're having our police squad debrief type early morning briefing thing the next morning, and we're going over our tickets, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got John Smith over in Colonnades. He needs something something software upgrade. And my boss Randy kind of chuckles, and I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, that guy's never here. I'm like, what does he do? He's like an executive sales VP. He's just he's never here. And the one time the son of a bitch was there, it was Friday afternoon at like 4:45. Like 4:45 on a Friday, I'm usually in my car on my way home. You know, God forbid my cell phone rang back then, because I'd have to say, yeah, I'm coming back from Colonnades. What do you need? And, do a U-turn in the middle of the freeway and sprint back to the office as quick as I could. But, yeah, it's like 4:45 in the afternoon, and I had just been killing time that Friday cleaning up one of the communications closets over in that building. Like, come on, how many times can I stack these computers and then unstack them and then restack them? And he sees me strolling out. He's like, you're with IT, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I want to ask you something. And so, I lean against it, and I'm standing there politely listening. Well, yeah, well, you, and this guy's like, I remember because we started out with a fairly simple question, and towards the end, he's like grilling me on using a PDA, because again, this is pre-2001, right? Palm Pilots were a big thing for executives to be seen with, and I'm like, I glance over, and his computer screensavers, Windows 98 screensavers come up, and it's set to the clock, and it's like 5:04, and it's like, and the minute he stopped to take a breath and the clock ticked over to like 5:07, I said, I think I have a copy of Information Week in my cube that's got some real cool articles about PDAs in it. I'll send it through Interoffice over to you. Oh, okay, sure. And I stomped down to the elevator. I was cussing a blue shirt. You're going to be stuck in traffic. It's Friday afternoon. I guess that was my John Bolton moment,
Well, it wouldn't have been John Bolton moment. If you, anyway, wasn't it Michael Bolton?
Michael Bolton. I'm sorry, I said John Bolton. Michael Bolton.
It would have been a Michael Bolton moment if you'd taken his PDA out to a field and smashed it.
Here, let me work on this for you. Thrown on some Public Enemy or some Ghetto Boys, and just beating it with a baseball bat. But anyway, to kind of try and steer all this back to a nice summation.
I feel sorry for the people. It's just fucking stupid.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, I mean, we're ostensibly talking about RPGs, and role advancements.
Guys,
Well, let me.
say in the chat if you hate us now.
Oh, it's Paul. Paul's not going to hate on me. I don't know Fairmain wide enough. She might be like working on a death note for us now, but to you know I was surprised when because our shifts when I was in production went from Wednesday to Saturday or Sunday to Tuesday or Sunday to Wednesday and Thursday to Saturday, and it was 12 hours. So we were in production when I was in the production department 24/7 365. And I was working a Saturday before I got over to IT, and I saw a guy come in, and I could see like a vaguely power armor kind of thing, and I see the guy strolling through our department. Again, it's a Saturday. He wasn't running like with a toolkit in his hand or a gas mask. I'm not kidding about the gas mask part. We had Halon 1301 fire extinguishers for our computers, and if the Halon went off and you saw somebody running with a gas mask, it just fucking vault cubes to get out of the data center, man, because bad stuff. So I didn't see Dave with a gas mask or running or anything. And I said, "Hey, Gundam shirt," and he's like, and he turns and faces me and he goes, "No, man, Space Marines." And it was a Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine. It's like, oh, so he came over after he did whatever. We chit chatted a bit, and I found it. He was a big 40K player, and the last time he messaged me on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and we chit chatted some, and we both were talking like I took Space Hulk. I got Space Hulk, the second edition, for Christmas in 1997. The missus bought it for me. And even though my miniatures weren't painted, they were assembled for it. I took Space Hulk and we played Space Hulk over lunch one day in our little cafeteria area. Enjoyed that. And as we were talking, we brought up the fact that Games Workshop had subsequently brought out a third and fourth edition of Space Hulk. And as bad as Games Workshop is, and they're awful. And I'm a good capitalist, man, but Games Workshop, just some of the shit they pull, most of the shit they pull, 99% of the shit they pull is utterly beyond the pale. But we can have that fight later. Um, the third and fourth editions of Space Hulk were not rules advancement. They went backwards. They did not build on second edition Space Hulk. They went back and looked at first edition and said, what made first edition so beloved? Psychic rules, more melee options for the Space Marines instead of just shooting, um, a little egg timer to time each player's moves with, and if the sand runs out of the egg timer before you've moved all, that your turn is over. Your doesn't matter if you didn't get everybody into position. It's just like, you know, the world moves on without you. Um, and they did that with fourth edition too. Fourth edition included more hoary old things from White Dwarf magazine and expansion sets that they released for first edition and all. Both of them were hugely popular. You can't get the last Space Hulk that came out was 2017, so 4 years ago. Dude, unless you're willing to plunk down like $300 US, that'd be what, 330, 340 for you. You can't get a complete new Space Hulk set now. It was wildly popular, and I'm sure if Games Workshop released fourth edition again, it would probably sell out just as fast as it did. So here's Games Workshop, a company which is at least as big, if not bigger, than Wizards of the Coast, re-releasing a first edition of one of their games, of a beloved game, and just saying, there you go, just like you remember back from 1989, and people fell on it like ravenous wolves. And you can make the case that Wizards of the Coast does that with first edition because you can get it printed on Lulu off of RPG Now or DM's Guild or whatever method you buy it. I don't know. Maybe is it me? Be honest. Is it just me? I mean, am I the problem? And
I mean, like, no, no, obviously, I don't think so. Because, like, I think in most games they got it right in first edition, or they got it as right as they were ever going to get. You can always fiddle with it. It's like, okay, like D&D first to second edition. Adding things like, because you already had the weapon abilities, so taking the secondary skills, background skills that you could roll up.
mhm.
My favourite was always magical and measurable worth, which describes so many people.
Yeah,
Um,
89 to double nuts. Sorry. You worked in an office before you became a slayer of dragons.
um, it having it and yeah, having the weapon abilities, it kind of made sense. It made sense. I personally am not in favour of it, but it made sense. It was a logical development that you have the weapon proficiencies and the non-weapon proficiencies, and you could explain why some classes can use poison and some can't, because okay, that's a non-weapon proficiency, and you can do things like that, and to be a little bit better in this little in a non to make it not just about combat and healing, but to to bring the dice and the rules into things outside the dungeon. That wasn't a terrible idea, it was kind of logical and it made sense from first to second edition. The only problem was that it begged the question, left a lot of unanswered questions. That if you have all these abilities, well, what about spells? How do spells fit in? Could you take less spells and get more non-weapon proficiencies? And then maybe you could take less non-weapon proficiencies and get more spells. So that kind of led into the third edition idea, and you had to plead so much more or less. Especially once you brought in that horrible idea of game balance. Everyone being equally powerful in different ways. It's completely different. Uh, Once you brought in that nonsense, then yeah, the complexity naturally grew. So that's always, I think, that's always the struggle when you're talking about writing an essay or writing a role-playing game. It's making dinner, making a nice dinner for a dinner party for a dozen of your friends. To say, yep, that's good enough. Let's go. Because you can always tweak it a little bit more. You can always add some more ingredients to the recipe. It won't necessarily be better. There'll be more ingredients. It's not necessarily better. I was looking up yesterday. Normally I make this beef and bean chili that the kids really love and have cooked for years and stuff.
Mhm.
And I did it with steak for a change. And I was looking up steak tortilla recipes.
Mhm.
Like, and there was a site, Yahoo or something, and it says how many ingredients, like 38 ingredients. It's like, really? Steak is to 38 ingredients? you know, is it really going to be that much better than if you had four ingredients?
Yeah.
It's so, and that's what I think is. Um, there's a famous quote by a guy with a French name and a blonde with the same. My accents are terrible. I keep my accents for all I can. Because it doesn't matter if they're bad, we've got to add things.
Right on.
Anyway, this French guy, I originally thought it was a quote about writing, but apparently he was an aircraft designer or an aircraft engineer back in the 1930s, and he said, "A thing is perfect not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to take away." So so I originally thought it was a quote about writing because how much can you strip it down? How much can you strip it down and still retain the essence of it? You can always write more. You can always say more. You can always add more to it. But how much can you take away and still that thing? It's like if you come to the, I use the same thing here at the gym, my workout design. I just think, okay, what can I take away? Like, if they're doing 10 exercises and I just split it down to five, which of those two out of those 10 exercises is going to give them 80% of their results.
Hmm.
And I think it's the same with game design, whether it be a short one or a longer one or an immensely complex one, which you don't have with GURPS or something. Um, what can you strip it down to give you most of the results? And the thing is that when people do their first edition of it, usually that's what they put in. They put in the 20% of the stuff that's going to come up 80% of the time in play. You know, it's pretty. Once you've been playing for a while, it's pretty easy to figure what the stuff is because the page naturally, the page comes out where it's been opened almost.
Right.
The book falls apart. So you see what like the dungeon masters play. They always falls open at the two hit tables.
Hmm.
And so then you figure out what you need to put on the D, and 80% of the time, that's all you have to do with the game.
It's like the old saw about armoring the B-17s. It's like, oh, well, they've been shot in all these places. We should armor them up there. No, armor everywhere else. Because the planes that got hit in those places didn't come back.
Exactly, exactly. So that's the thing. So figure out what is the minority of rules that's going to give you the majority of your results, or the minority of ingredients in your house that is going to make the majority of your meal. So macaroni, elbows, and cheese. Anyway,
Ah, you've been looking in my pantry, I see.
so yeah, so I think that, yeah, and as I said, I think the thing with the first edition is usually they figure out that 20% of the stuff is going to give 80% of the results, and that's usually what we see in the game, and that's why the first edition is usually the shortest one as well. But then they start adding things to it, adding other stuff over time, and I don't, coming back to what we were first talking about, I don't think it's really necessary in most cases because that other 80% of stuff they're adding, most of them are game custom. And it is a bit of a gamble from game companies because to make money they have to sell books, but it's a social creative hobby, so people are going to write and come up with their own stuff at the game table.
Hmm.
But to make money, the company's got to sell books, so it's got to either make more games or encourage gamers to buy more stuff from it, um, or sell them more stuff. So I would rather make more games myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you there.
I mean, the kids now in the chess federations, all themselves, they don't go around changing the rules of chess and making chess second edition with 50 pages of rules instead of one page. They just try to get more people playing chess.
Right.
And and chess is public domain. Anyone can make a chess set. So there's plenty of companies that make the people make their living just from making chess sets.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, they usually make checkers and stuff as well.
I've seen some interesting chess variants, but I mean, they're not anything you need. Like you're never going to go to a park, with the concrete chessboard and sit down and engraved next to it is, this is for fast kings only. You know, chess revision 2, fast kings only. You can't play regular chess at this table. So I think that's what we need more of in role playing games. Less less rules revisionism. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there is an appetite for it out there, as you've seen with the political renaissance, as people like to call it. Um, but as I said before, with the open game tables, I never had any problem doing a game table down at the club. I just put a thing up on their Facebook page, and between the times and between the rise of Atari, tons of Gygax stepped out into the world.
yes.
Um, yeah, so I'd shop something cheap. People would come along. Never had any problem. Getting games for that at a game time. It's a bit different if you ask me to come to your house or some small library room
Sure.
There's definitely appetite for fit there. So I think that's something that they've done really well with all their adventurers and the rest, getting a lot of people to play.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing is if it sounds like I'm taking just a massive shit on fifth edition because, you know, old man yells at cloud uh, attitude. It isn't. I absolutely appreciate what they've done in terms of from a standpoint of we've made D&D. Now they have been saying this since third edition came out. It's more popular now than it ever was before. I don't think that was the case with fourth edition. I don't buy that in the least. I don't think people were playing fucking essentials over Pathfinder and just vanilla third or three and a half edition in the least. If that was the case, then they wouldn't have scrambled like they did to to get uh, to get on the apology train like they did with the release of all the old school, and I mean all the old school stuff. In case you guys weren't aware of this, it wasn't just AD&D that got released. Second edition got re-released in deluxe editions, and third edition got re-released, or 3.5 in deluxe editions. They really were really sorry about 4E.
Yeah, nobody's doing retro clones of fourth edition.
Nobody is out there going, oh yeah, yeah, let's. I've just started working on my 4E retro clone. That's just not happening. Anyway, speaking of games and gaming and getting people at the table, it is time to remind all of our wonderful viewers that uh, we are sitting at 660 viewers now, Kyle. We have come to a nice round number. Now, you tell me if you think this is a good idea. I think when we hit 666, we do like a live cover of Number of the Beast by Maiden, like a karaoke version. You can tell me if you want. It sounds great. But we're sitting at 660 viewers, and we're 340 subscribers. I said viewers. I'm assuming they all view. Maybe they don't. I don't know. We are 340 subscribers short of a live online games day. When you can come on, I will run games for an entire day on Discord. AD&D, OD&D. Hell, I'll figure out a way to run Space Hulk for a couple of two or three people if you want to do that. But we'll be doing an entire games day. Or I'll be doing an entire. I don't want to put anything on you, Kyle. But
Well, I can add a drop of the hat. The one gaming award I ever got was at a convention, and I got the best and fairest. You don't really have that in the US. You've got most valuable player or something, but yeah, best and fairest is the person who played the best, and yeah, the fairest, the most honestly and decently, the best sports person, the most sportsman. Um, and I got best and fairest game master because we had three other game masters before no show,
mhm.
and they just handed me a game and made me run it. And only in one of the game sessions did I have to piss off my master players. Were saying, "Look, give me a break. I've just been given this game and I haven't read it. I'm trying to run it."
There you go.
um, and the prize I got for best and fairest, I didn't even get a little plastic trophy. They gave me the soft cover version of Human Occupied Landfill, which was this fantastic game where it's an alien planet which is the garbage planet. It's just where the word cloth. They have the garbage planet
Yes, yes.
where they dump all the garbage. And there are people living on it and recycling and everything. And they tried to be innovative in it. It was like photocopying handwritten notes. It wasn't you were the best GM, so we gave you the worst role playing game.
Nah.
So I can run things at the drop of a hat. Thousands of players are willing to
Well, I won't make you run human occupied landfill. Perhaps you can run some. You can run some conflict.
yeah.
Run some conflict, but
Well, my copy of Human Occupied Landfill was sent to landfill.
there you go. Um, I tell you what, I when I have run free RPGs for free RPG Day, I usually get a stack of stuff to give away, and I keep, I skim some and keep it for myself. One year, I got this awful, vulgar, sexually themed entitled thing from James Raggy. We'll get a strike if I go into what was in it. And I gave it away as a booby prize. I can say booby because I'm referring to the bird or someone who is not there mentally. I gave it away as a booby prize to a player who detonated a fireball in an enclosed space and wiped out the party. I ran the tournament version of A1, the first Slave Lords module, and they got to the end, and he said, "Oh, I'll cast a fireball into the room above us," and I don't think he understood how old school fireball worked. 33 10 by 10 by 10 squares, Kyle. 33 of them.
Yes.
Um, and the A1 map is in 5 square foot units. So 66. There were no survivors. Anyway, so as the booby prize, he got that book. About a year later, I was so angry I could have punched myself in the nards because, like, Raggy did like a limited print run of those, and people were scrambling around paying hundreds of dollars for it on eBay. So at the next free RPG day, when I got the next book from Raggy, which was similarly done, that one went into a box somewhere. But yeah, if it was just common stuff, I would have tossed it. But anyway, we will not run games by Jim Raggy. We will not run Human Occupied Landfill. But I will run some OD&D, some AD&D. Kyle, if your game, you can run some Conflict. And I have a really cool Tales from the Loop scenario I'd like to run. So we might do that, and we might do some board games. But that's when we hit. That is the gift, our gift back to you guys when we hit 1,000 subs on the YouTube channel. 1,000 subs is important, not just because of monetization, because I don't think like we'll hit 1,000 and then suddenly acquire like 2 million more, and Kyle and I can live in semi-retirement from ad revenue. Um, but um, like certain presentations of notifications, posting up photos like that, you would think that's just like, okay, I can just go into my YouTube account and post like a teaser photo for this week's mail call or something. Yeah, no, I can't do that unless I have 1,000 subs. So tell your friends, tell your family you want to go to this virtual mini con run by this fat beard and his fit Australian friend, his very, very sexy fit Australian friend. Um, and hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. It really helps us out a ton, and we will give back to you guys. We will run a mini con, and we'll have a lot of fun doing it. So please, please do that and help us get there. So, you got anything else, man? Anything else happening?
Well, I was going to say that next week I think Lieutenant Walters should join the fight for freedom in the Republic of Frankistan.
I think Lieutenant Walters is going to have to pick up a job in Frankistan, maybe as a cash-in transit driver or something.
Well, so Bill knows, but others don't should know. Anyway, so on Saturday had a game night and had some people around, and yeah, I didn't know what they wanted for dinner. You know,
But if I may interject, just for specialist combat people, that is technically not that surprising. I was watching a show about Navy SEALs. The majority of Navy SEALs actually have PhDs. Like
Well, one has a PhD, one has done a PhD in psychology, and then he joined the police force, and he stepped out after a mishap. He got the mishap where all the mishap, what was it? Social minus like loss of social respect, violence, or like this leads to a bad conduct discharge. This takes reference to those words. Assume they are in prison. So he took it from one year prison. He went from working class to underclass.
oof.
So he was a PhD with a bad conduct discharge for police reform.
I'm feeling like somebody might have lent someone their prescription pad.
I don't know. So then he did a term in army just to get some combat skills. Uh, yeah, and so we had a couple other guys who just picked up psych, and we had one commando, and the commando had hand commands for each occupation, but she didn't have any firearms skills.
So she,
Talent engineer. So yeah, I had to come up with something that matched their abilities, and I said, the basic six campaign types is training, which encompasses all the others, police and crime work, counterinsurgency, conventional conflicts, anarchy, and terrorism, and they all didn't do counterinsurgency. So I said that um, they were attached to they were part of an intelligence section, which was attached to an international force in the Republic of, and I said, what do you guys want to call it? And they called it Frankistan. Just southeast of me is a suburb called Frankston. It's known for it has a large refugee community. So there's Afghans and Pakistanis and Sudanese and so on. There's a large refugee community, and there's a high unemployment rate. And it's not really it's known for like high crime rate, but it's not. You can walk the streets at night.
sure,
It's the same as if you see half a dozen young guys who are drunk, don't walk right past them. Find another way home.
sure,
So the same as anywhere in the world. So there's not like running gun battles in the streets like 1980s Midian or something. Um, but people still joke about it, call it Frankistan. So we called it Frankistan, run by Dr. Sir Field Marshal President the White Frank, who won the last election with 90% of the vote. And there's a UN peacekeeping force which are supported by a separate international force who wish to maintain the freedoms of Pakistan. Um, and so there are many insurgent groups running around, and the one in the area was called the Squad of Righteous Fury, which sounds a lot better than the original Pakistani.
I can only imagine.
And yeah, so a couple of guys have been picked up. There's two guys that have been picked up, and the rules were that if the international force detains anyone, that either release them or hand them over to the civil authorities within 24 hours. You hand them over to the civil authorities, usually they're around for about 3 days, and after about 3 days, they either bribe their way out or they disappear into the Pakistani prison system, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Um, so they went and these guys have been softened up by the Pakistani police for a couple of days, and they interrogated them, and they found that there was a guy. One was a former pre-war mechanical engineer who was involved. He was the Russians were smuggling stolen surface marine into the country, or planning to do so. This was going to change the war
Hmm.
So it was important to stop them. So that mechanical engineer was apparently preparing sites in the city to install the places, and he was also involved in designing IEDs. And then the other guy was a messenger. So they discovered that the messages were being based. You get a guy on a motorbike who would memorize a string of letters and numbers, and then take them from A to B, and the guy at the end would decode them with a one-time pad that he had. Um, and so they then understood why there hadn't been anyone to send messages because it was just in some guy's head. And even if the guy was captured and rattled off a string of numbers and letters, they still wouldn't be able to decode it because they didn't have a one-time pad. So
Got.
they went and found it, and they also found that the guy had rural property. They got information that some stuff might be stored there, so they went and looked at the rural property. They said, "Oh, maybe you could check it out with a drone." I explained, well, the American contingent is the ones who control the drones, and it'll take a few days to get drone pictures back because it's not a priority at the moment because it's just a tip. And then they decided not to do the drones because they said, hang on, what kind of drones would go around predators around? Oh, fuck, they'll just blow the place up. Look, we want the missiles and we want, because there was a Russian in there, Russians couldn't go in. We want the missiles and we want the Russians. The Americans would just blow it in space. They decided to go out there and start this up. Um, they asked for access to an Abrams tank and they were told no. They got Humvees that were painted in the bright white of the International Force, original code.
Right.
So they had bright white Humvees. For some reason, they decided to approach in the middle of the day. It was really early. All the trees denuded. So they came up on the main road about half a mile away from the compound, um, and then they sat and watched for a while. They looked through their binoculars, and they saw half a dozen insurgents outside, just lounging around. And as they were watching, a tall white guy came out. He looks a bit Russian. And they watched him, and he himself picked up some binoculars and watched them. They were looking at each other.
Yeah.
Uh, so then they decided to assault the place, and they came with the Hummers. They had four commanders, men and arms. Um, so they grasped it up. They laid down suppressive fire with their 20 machine guns on top of the Humvees, and they approached the place. And the insurgents all went inside the compound and closed the shutters and stuff. So then the players were trying to assault the compound. They themselves were under fire. Um, so they tried to open the front door with 40mm grenade launchers, and they kept missing. My favourite was when one missed by 24 metres and it actually went over the compound and struck the barn behind it. So they were able to hit the barn.
They could hit the, yes, I remember that you mentioning that in your breakdown. So the players were actually able to hit the broadside of a barn.
Yeah, they weren't aiming at it, but they were able to hit it. And so then eventually they made their way in at very close range and after firefight. The insurgents died and they went through the insurgents. So it was like an old Roman villa kind of thing with a bunch of rooms on a central courtyard with a water cistern. And next to the water cistern was these Russian sort of big crates with Cyrillic writing
Hmm.
wrapped in deck board. And with the deck board stretching out to the back. So they went, oh shit, we don't want them to destroy them. So one of the players, I'll creep forward and he was going forward under fire to cut the deck board. Um, and while he did so, because he rushed forward under fire, so he wasn't looking where he was going, he tripped with a little improvised frag grenade, just a bit of wire, pulled the pin out. He dove to one side,
Mhm.
They were protected from the main part of the blast by the building itself and by the large water system that was in there. Uh, but they were badly concussed. So then the conscious ones went around the back. The guys had seen running around the back and found the Russian guy with an insurgent desperately trying to start a motorcycle. Wasn't starting. Kick-started. So they bailed him up with a Humvee and the 30 cal. They fired warning shots over his head and didn't give up. So they didn't get hold of the missiles, but there was enough remains to confirm that they were Russian missiles, and they had all these papers and they had him. And we left. All went pretty well. It went pretty much as I expected. Um, so even though the guys didn't have a lot of really hardcore combat skills, because they went in with a plan, they laid out suppressive fire with their vehicles, commandos and that they had superior numbers, and because they didn't just charge in, they were okay. One guy, just to troll us, John, he snuck off around the corner by himself without the I said, you guys got the radios, you can tell us. No, I'm not going to tell anyone where I'm going, he said. He was just trolling us, he was trying to entertain himself, like doing something stupid. Yeah,
Uh,
what a badly wounded, and he was shot. And then he decided to talk.
Jesus.
So he called for help because there was a guy there was an insurgent who was sneaking on top of him carrying an RPG about to grass up the place, the wild place. Um, and so he told them about that. And so the commando popped around the corner and shot the guy. And then the commando went away. And John thought about picking up the RPG. He said, "No, I better not pick up the RPG because if I'm a lone guy coming with an RPG on my shoulder around the corner from where the enemy are, the rest of the team might think that I'm one of the insurgents that shoot." I'm like, yes, John, that's correct.
That
So
that that is
I did.
that is the right answer. You may now take something from the prize box.
Yeah, you get to leave.
Yeah. I would recommend a compression bandage and a bag of plasma.
Yeah. So so they were successful. Some of them got wounded. Nobody got killed. Well, the enemy got killed, but they didn't. None of the PCs did. There's one commando who got shot 4 times, but every time he rolled, and he just stayed up. He stayed up and he kept going.
Oof.
So he'll probably end up with a medical discharge.
Yeah.
But that's an honourable discharge.
You know,
And
y-
there's another couple of guys who are going to spend a few weeks in hospital.
yeah.
They survived. Those
That's
guys. So even when they didn't have like ninja skills kind of thing, special forces ninja skills, because they had a reasonably good plan and they didn't all run off like themselves trying to be Rambo, they were okay. They were okay. So even though for individual combat it can be pretty brute, it's pretty deadly. If you work as a team, even if you're not all special forces ninja types, you'll be okay. That's what it counts.
I mean, there's there's a scene. There's a great scene. I mean, saying there's a great scene in Band of Brothers, it's just like I should just say there's a scene in Band of Brothers, and therefore you should know it's great. And I'm sure you know the bit I'm talking about. The When they took out the four 75 millimeter howitzers that were hitting the beach. It's not. It's like a famous engagement infantry tactics still studied today. Breakhor Manor. In the space of about 30 seconds, a German potato masher grenade is thrown at the feet of three of the members of the 501st, including Dick Winters. And this is not a thing for Hollywood. This happened. And they all threw themselves flat and the grenade blew up and nobody was hurt. And then somebody bobbles a grenade, a M2 pineapple grenade, and drops it at their feet. And they all scramble and throw themselves down and it blows up again. And one of the soldiers who was in both incidents says, "God damn it, that's the second time today." And it's just, you were talking about the guy getting hit 4 times. It's just sometimes some sometimes it just goes. I mean, same engagement. Like the one KIA on the American side wasn't even a guy that was supposed to be there. He heard he was separated from regimental headquarters. He heard the sound of gunfire. He saw the battle going on. He saw Winters, and he crawled up to him and said, "Sir, I'm looking for regimental headquarters. Can you tell me where it is?" And he kind of gestures behind him in the direction the guy came. And again, this is all historically accurate. He goes, "Well, I just," and turns his head and gets hit and died. Like, took a round to the helmet and expired right there. Um, it's like my pappy used to say, man. Some days you get the bear, and someday the bear gets you. You know, and that's what I love about Conflict. And Conflict is a game you can play at the mini con if you guys will pump those numbers up.
Yeah, well, I think in our next session,
Good.
Walters will, of course, will be part of the American contingent. That means he gets the Predator drone close.
Yeah, I just get to flip open my modified Android phone and say, yes, do something about this house that has too much concrete on it.
You got a Predator drone now.
Yeah, Hitman, this is Hammer.
Call it in.
What do you mean?
Can't even do that. Stuff looks like the cabinets connected to Google Maps, and you just pointed. You press a
Yeah.
button. You know,
But because a it's American.
field of vision space.
Yeah. But because A, it's American, and B, it's on a mobile phone, I may have to buy coins to get the airstrike. If you want a Hellfire strike instead of a JDAM, upgrade now by staying in the combat zone for the next 48 hours, or purchase 500 coins from our app store. Let's look at some of this chat. People have been throwing us some chat, and we've been rude and ignoring them. Paul said, "Gosh, this is from like a half an hour ago. That was a point where Pathfinder edged them out in sales. I think when we were talking about when Wizards came crawling on their bellies back to us to ask us to please play D&D. Wasn't until 5th Ed that D&D took it back. Something to be said for that, I suppose, and I agree. As for 4th Ed, I'll say this. I appreciated the system as a team-based combat game. Yeah. Again, if it had been called D&D Tactics and put like published in a little box with a map and some counters, and they had said, you know, a full role-playing game version of D&D will be out, next quarter or whatever. Try this out, and then gone ahead. I don't think it would have been as horribly received as it was. And the fact that they insulted people with their advertising didn't help either. It was 2007, not 1994. Like, there was a stretch in the 90s, when everything was extreme in the 90s. Everything was bright green and extreme, and like, ads that would just come out and just straight up be like, "You're an idiot for not buying this." Oh, okay, I'll buy that. The Tiger Electronics released a handheld console, and just the whole ad just like shits on everybody that want to buy it.
My favorite D&D ad was the one with the guy sitting in his basement with the blue lights and screen on it, and he's like this,
Yeah,
tired and depressed, and saying, if you're going to sit in your basement pretending to be an elf, you should at least have some friends around. Like, it's just perfect. And it's insulting to them, to people, but it's like, at least be social.
my my favorite D&D ads have Heidi and Elsie Gygax in them, and were from 1979. But I have to be polite and not go into any further discussion of those. But yeah, 4th Ed without the baggage of having been called D&D would have been a different. And then, of course, Kyle made the comment, "There's no D&D but 1E, and Gygax is its prophet." Yes. 4th Ed should have been called D&D Tactics. And Paul said, "I'll give you that so long as we can call it a 3rd Ed Prestige class." So no worries, Paul. I think we're all on the same page there. Oh my goodness.
They got it right the first time.
They got it right the first time. Yes, they did.
That's true of most game companies. That's true of most game companies.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people will throw a little bit of shade at OD&D and D and say, well, even OD&D had splat books come out for it. No, 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 no. People did not demand Greyhawk or Blackmoor or Eldritch Wizardry or Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. D&D evolved organically back then, and even though money was involved, they were very much in the way of saying, this looks like fun, let's put this out. And they did.
Yeah.
I think people would find this a lot of fun. And I would even say that up until um, probably up until and including Fiend Folio, that was the mindset. And this is just my speculation, I'm just blue skying here. I'm not trying to speak like, yes, I was there and I know and I knew all the people. But I would say up until like the last non-cash grab D&D book that came out, which would have either been Fiend Folio or Monster Manual 2, that it was still very driven by creative. I mean, Jim Ward released, he wrote Deities and Demigods with Rob Kuntz, and he literally did it because he liked writing gods, demigods, and heroes, and said we should do this for AD&D too. So we got deities and demigods.
Well, it's what we were saying on the Ishiro's show last week when people were talking about game design and what's the major obstacle. And I said I felt the major obstacle was feeling like you had something to say. Because there's 4 million books published in the US annually and there's 693 million sales. So there's less than 200 copies per book. So really, you're not writing to be read, but most people won't be read. You're writing because you have something to say. So feeling like you have something to say when you compare it to some venerable old stuff that exists,
Mhm.
it's pretty easy to be intimidated. And really the only difference between what you write and this is about printing and about 40 years. So I think don't be humble. Like if you're really past something, and talking to last week on your show about Cinnabon, uh, the Raven C.S. McCracken,
Mhm.
he is as mad as a cut snake. He has never lost that shameless adolescent geek enthusiasm. That shameless adolescent geek enthusiasm led you, a 12-year-old you, to send a module to TSR.
Guilty as
I
charged.
think hold on to that. Go ahead, be creative, do your thing, write your game, write your module, all the rest. And I think really the real renaissance is not being the old school rule as such, but the return of people willing to be creative.
Mhm.
So you had that period in the 70s and the 80s where people were just churning out heaps of stuff and they're putting together the mimeograph copies and selling it at manuscript. It was just shamelessly adolescent geeky enthusiasm.
Mhm.
And then you had that period in the 90s and the early 2000s where people started being more kind of self-conscious and, oh no, if I produce something, it's got to be top quality and being so fussy that they never actually published.
Yeah.
Maybe if they were lucky, the game group saw it, but very often not even that. There's a lot of manuscripts sitting out there that never seen the light of day. A lot of ideas that have never been published. And then we got into the 2010s, and you had RPG Now and Rise for RPG come along, Lulu and all the rest, and all these other print-on-demand services, and people start and blogs and all the rest. People started putting stuff out there, and I think that's good. As much as we can rag on this or that person with their crazy ideas with hybrids and all the rest, the or fatal, there are people out there being creative,
Yeah.
and that's good. That's cool.
I mean, one of my favorite things to do when I'm looking at an old Dragon magazine or a PDF of Dragon magazine is not necessarily to read, like, oh, here's 10 new types of dragons, or here's, an alternate rule system for fighting with your bare fist, but it's to go to the back and look at the ads and wonder, you know, uh, here's a guy who created a fantasy role playing game and he bought like a 2-inch, one column wide ad in the back of Dragon magazine, and maybe it's in 4 issues. Did he sell any? Did he end up burning them for heat in the winter? That that part of the history of RPGs is as interesting to me as any slickly produced thing. Oh, Aurora popped in the chat. Thought I'd pop in and say hi before movie night. Kyle really, she really can't hear you. Um,
Can you hear me better now, or I'm louder now? We'll see.
we'll see, but yeah, no, I find I find the idea of a guy who mimeographed 50 copies of a role playing game and spent you know $25 4 months in a row to put an ad in Dragon magazine. I want to see his game. I don't want to see fucking Vampire the Masquerade. White Wolf had millions of dollars. Well, they had thousands of dollars. And then once the game got rolling, then they had millions of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of dollars anyway, to plow into increasingly slicker books. But tell me about the guy who was an also ran, because his shit might be just as good, if not better. I made a joke about this, but I desperately want a copy of Realm of Yolmi. And there's not even a PDF of it floating around out there. It is this gonzo, just like reading about it, it's like World of Cinnabar meets Gamma World. I really want a copy of Realm of Yolmi, but it was just a kitchen sink press kind of thing. Um, I'd rather have that than the next slickly produced D&D splat book anytime.
Yeah, it's like the prequels, I think this is one great thing that Netflix has done. Just give these random people a couple million bucks each to make something show. I'm more interested in seeing $102 million shows than one $200 million show.
Yeah,
Because you're more likely to get something awesome. You get some really awful stuff as well,
yeah,
but you're more likely to get something awesome. I just love seeing all those people being able to create
yep. So,
at great at the game taken too. That's the wonderful thing about the hobby.
yep.
As Aaron says, it's a social way to be creative with friends.
Right here on YouTube, right there's a channel called Dust, and it is short science fiction films. I mean, some of them are like major studios, but all of them are just tiny and on a shoestring budget. And I would say the vast majority of them I've seen are uh, at least as entertaining as shit that I've gone in and spent my $9.50 for a movie ticket on and wasted 2 hours of my life. Now granted, more than a fair share of them is the real enemy was man all along. You know, it's like you look at the Twilight Zone. There's episodes of the Twilight Zone all the time in the world. The Obsolete Man, Death's Head Revisited, uh, episodes like that are just burned into our subconscious. But then there's so many of them that are like, it turns out the person he made a deal with was the devil. Bum bum bum. But there's enough of them in the library of short science fiction movies that go and watch. It's 9 minutes of your life, and you might see, you might see something, and it might hit you completely different. There's one, and this is the funniest, weirdest connection in the world. Kyle, you're probably gonna pull a face when I tell you this. Um, there's I think it's Lil Jon has a rap song. Well, it's not even really a rap song. It's just more of a dance beat with a few lyrics sung over it called "Turn Down for What." The woman who was in that video is in this short science fiction movie, but the premise of it is that in some unspecified near future, you gotta wear a mood stabilizer patch. Basically, it's a computer controlled patch that's colloquially referred to as a happy patch, and it's like, Zoloft or Prozac or something, some future analog that is automatically administered to you, and it just evens you out. And the lady goes to this house, this woman's house. It's out in a rural place, and she's like, "Your daughter's not registered. She's not wearing her patch." And she's like, "We don't want to do that." And she's like, "You don't have a choice. I will call the authorities." And so she goes, and the woman goes and talks to the little girl by herself, and they have a lot of interaction together. And I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. You're just going to have to go watch it. I don't remember what it's called, but clearly the ending, the way it ending was supposed to be one way, but I reacted completely differently. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was fantastic, but I like my take on it was totally different. And there's hundreds of them on the Dust channel, and that to me, that's better than somebody saying, you know, "Oh, hey, there's going to be a second Avatar movie. Don't you want to go watch Jim Cameron jizz over $2.2 billion just spread out on the studio floor?" No.
I think you've got a good point with talking about the real enemy was man. I think we can up it into cliches from time to time.
Yeah.
I was just thinking earlier, as I dropped the kids off at school, I run a thing with Bill. If you get post-apocalyptic running around the United States, someone would be trying to restore the United States. I thought I would do something different. The guy who wants to restore the United States is a good guy. Because in those post-apocalyptic shows, the ones who want to restore the United States are always evil, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always a military dictator who, assassinates children or something. And they're always evil. I would have the guy who wants to restore the United States actually be a decent guy.
Yeah. The guy who wants to establish a little bit of order. I mean, what have you and I said about what is it, Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4? They should have an option where you can side with pagan men.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the Easter egg ending that you can do without playing the game.
Yeah, yeah. If he says, "Wait here, I'll be back in 15 minutes." If you just,
Minutes away. Then he goes off and he hacks his country.
yeah,
And you don't get to play the game.
yeah, yeah. It doesn't give you that ending. There's a similar ending in Far Cry 5, I think. If you choose not to arrest the cult leader.
Far Cry 4, yes. As he said in the end, all for nothing. I'm so bitter and twisted about that game. Still good.
Oh my gosh.
Deleted that from my console and never play it again.
I understand. I understand, my friend. Virtual pat on the shoulder.
Ultimate work.
Alrighty, see you around, Aurora. Have a nice evening. I think we've had a pretty good run of it this evening, Kyle. What do you say? Anything in closing?
Next week I play Conflict. So
Next week we'll play Conflict.
people don't like violence and egregious bloodshed should not tune in. If people enjoy it and think that it's wonderful, listen.
Right on.
Yes,
S-
the majority is punching buttons.
All right.
She watched Avengement with people on the show.
Excellent.
Avenger on Netflix with Scott Adkins who's gone to prison for a crime he did commit, but he got set up. There's a hit put out on him, a contract put out on him. So it has the most unusual training montage I've seen in years. So what happens is that because there's a contract put out on him, guys try to beat him to death in prison or shiv him or whatever. He fights them, he beats the shit out of them,
Benjamin.
And most of it takes place in a pub where he shoots a guy, in the knee with a
He,
shotgun, a foot with a shotgun,
ugh.
passes somebody else, and when he gets his teeth replaced after being beaten up, he gets them replaced with steel teeth. He'd asked for enamel, like they gave him steel teeth, and they said, you could just pay for it to, once you get that, you pay for it to be replaced. And he goes, I like it. It looks fucking badass. It's ridiculously violent and stupid, and it's brilliant.
All right. Well,
You'll enjoy its ridiculousness.
all right.
But
Well,
I've got something else.
we'll check that out then next week. A couple of show notes. Just got a message from Kat. She and she will not be streaming tonight. However, tomorrow I will be back. I will be doing Paint Lab. I think I found a better setup for my camera, so it will be a little bit more watchable. Um, I keep forgetting that I can actually have the boom extended up and out rather than off to the side. So it'll hopefully be a little more comfortable for me to paint and easier for you guys to view. So that, and then Friday, who knows what'll happen Friday? I don't know. Um, I'll come up with something fun. So as always, God bless you all. Thank you for stopping by tonight. Love you. And Kyle, of course, thank you, Kyle, for being here for another wonderful Wastrel Wednesday. And everybody who commented in, uh, Paul, Fair Maiden White, Anthony, Aurora, of course, old friend of ours, Aurora, lovely to see her. And we'll see you guys. Kyle and I will see you guys next week. I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.